Hi, my name is Dirk Smit with Ironman 4x4 Africa and welcome to a brand new conservation video. I'm standing just outside of Hoedspruit with the trusty little Suzuki Jimny, our little overlanding beast, and we're going to do a couple of more trips with this thing. But for now, we are here to do a conservation video with our conservation partners, Wild Wonderful World, to learn a bit more about a prehistoric looking bird called the ground-hornbill. If you have traveled Southern Africa, and especially in protected wildlife areas, you might have heard the low thumping noise of the Southern Ground-Hornbill, also known as thunderbirds, a local name referring to them being observed with the first good summer rains. The team from Wild Wonderful World joined researchers Carrie Hickman and Kyle-Mark Middleton on an early morning drive to check on their ground-hornbill nests.
Very good. My name is Kyle-Mark Middleton. I am the Senior Coordinator of Mabula Ground-Hornbill Project and pretty much in charge of the low-felt conservation of ground-hornbills.
So my name's Carrie Hickman. I'm a PhD researcher at the FitzPatrick Insitute of African Ornithology at the University of Cape Town, and I'm studying the effects of high temperatures on chick growth and physiology in the Southern Ground-Hornbill. So the APNR Southern Ground-Hornbill Project has been going for 23 years now, and different researchers have come through the project focusing on different aspects of the bird, such as their ecology, their group movements, nesting success, and even vocalizations. So now my research is focusing more on the kind of effects of climate change on these birds and what that means for their survival.
Their distribution and their population has decreased by about 70% in the past 100 years. So quite a substantial decrease, and most of the places where they exist now is protected areas. So, you know, places like this where, you know, the birds are looked after, well managed and things like that. So it's targeting these other areas and getting people on board and making people just realize that, you know, these birds exist, number one, and that they actually really, like, they could expand. It's not an impossible thing to do. It's a very achievable option. And, you know, we speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people are like, they always say, oh, I remember these birds from when I was a child, but then now they're like, oh, we haven't seen them in years.
So we're in the APNR, which is the Associated Private Nature Reserves, which is part of the Greater Kruger, and we're about 30 minutes from Hoedspruit. Well, actually now we're about an hour and a half into the reserve, so we're quite far in. And we're just going to go and check on our first nest this morning. Hopefully there'll be a chick inside the nest that should be about 40 days old if it's still there. So we're going to go and measure the chick, take some weights of the chick and check everything's okay. And we do this at about 2-week intervals throughout the whole time the chick's in the nest. So at the beginning of the season, we monitor each nest, we check inside each nest and start to focus in on the nests that are active. And then we will keep coming back to those nests. And as soon as eggs are laid, we weigh and measure those eggs. So we're also using egg size in our research as well. And then we can also predict hatching dates. And we need to make sure we get those hatching dates pretty exact, which is quite difficult. So we want to make sure we come back to the nest when the chick is 1 day old, and we do those measurements from 1 day old, and then it increments through till the chick is 75 days old, and that chick will then fledge from about 80 to 90 days after that. So we do these basic measurements which you saw, which we do tarsus, wing, head, beak. We take a weight, And that will give us a really nice growth curve for the species, and that's a first for the wild population that's been done. So now this chick is he's only halfway through his time in the nest. So a lot of the effort now, a lot of the energy is going to go into making sure these feathers are nice so that they can all grown in so that it can fly eventually. So they tend to actually reach their peak weight from now until 60 days, and then they just stay the same weight or they even lose weight. So now all the energy goes into the beak growth and these tail feathers and wing feathers. All right, I just need to weigh him.
Just wants to see what's going on.
Needs to keep double checking. 2900. So the reason we're putting camera traps up at the nest is we want to monitor individuals in the groups. We want to be able to identify the individuals, and we have an ID kit for this. And then we also want to see what food the chick is getting. So how much food is the chick getting? How often are the parents feeding the chick? So that we can relate that to the growth rates of the chicks.
The camera traps have proved to be an excellent tool for ground hornbill research. Once the camera senses movement, it starts to film unbelievable interactions.
And we can look at what food's being brought to the chick with the camera traps. So that's why we have the camera traps up there. We can see exactly the amount of food that's coming in, and we can see how many birds are in the group and who's contributing. So sometimes you have large group number, but not all the group members contribute towards feeding the chick. Some of the younger ones are actually detrimental, and they kind of come and steal food from inside the nest. So it's all these kind of social aspects, as well as the temperature, as well as the feeding rates, that we have to kind of combine together to see what's going on and what that means for the chick's growth. So now we're going to go and check our next nest. It's about a 20-minute drive from here, and the chick is should be about the same age. So we're just going to go and check on that one and do the same again. In this area, the main threat is kind of lack of habitat, so lack of those nesting sites, human encroachment. You know, when we drive around here, the reason we use artificial nests is because a lot of these natural nests are no longer available for the birds due to human movement, deforestation, even activity around natural nesting sites, such as roads going right underneath trees, just a lot of human activity. And throughout Africa, there's other issues such as poisoning, traditional beliefs, but these are less major compared to the effects of human encroachment, I think.
I mean, it started many years back now. I think I've been doing ground-hornbill conservation for, it's going on 8 years now. Started by sheer chance, actually. I grew up in the area. I always knew there was a ground-hornbill project here, and I just heard via the grapevine or via the bushvine, as a lot of people say, that those researchers were leaving at the time. It definitely piqued my interest, and I went and applied, got the job, and it snowballed, and I started on the project that Carrie works for, and the APNR Ground-Hornbill Project. Finished my PhD, and then got offered a job at Mabula Ground-Hornbill Project on a bigger scale kind of thing. So APNR Ground-Hornbill Project it focuses on one specific area, and Mabula is more the big scale kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of just snowballed, and it's been an exciting ride pretty much. So ground hornbills, for the people who don't know, they'll lay 2 eggs, and the eggs hatch about 5 days apart from each other. But between those 5 days, the chick grows substantially. So the one chick will probably be this size, and the other chick will probably be this size. And what happens is that smaller chick just gets outcompeted and dies invariably in the wild. So before that chick dies, we'll go into the nest and we'll take that chick, And then we've got a very specialized ground-hornbill rearing facility based at Loskop Dam, where the birds will then be hand-reared for about 80 days, so that's about their fledging date. After which they will be put with kind of semi-wild adult birds where they'll just be taught how to do ground-hornbill things, and then we'll put groups together, so artificially form groups, and then release them into areas that we've identified as important key areas for the population as a whole. So it's been massively successful. Obviously, with things like this, it's always, as much as people deny it, it's always trial and error with a lot of things. But it's been going, and we have had massive success now, to the point now where every group we release are breeding independently without any intervention. So it's been great. It's slow, but it's good. You can see from this chick now, you can see the personality differences between these individuals. This chick was a lot more calm and pretty much just played dead. Unfortunately, when it's a difficult nest like this, sometimes you want them to be a bit lively, so that when you're trying to put them back in the nest, a lot of the times, if they are lively, they just walk out of the bag that we take them and put them into. So with this one playing dead, when I put it back in the nest, it just lay there in the bag, so I had to physically pick it up and take it out. But it is happy now that it's back in its nest. It gets its little bit of confidence back, and it's good to go. But now, from now on, we're going to take another little drive, and we're actually going to go install one of these artificial nests so that we can provide another group with the opportunity to breed.
Yeah, it's awful.
Put yours up.
Unbelievable.
Hey, I bet your bro's cheap.
That's normal.
Oh, bro.
It's not, they just got a small head. Jonty, what you guys up to?
We're just seeing how I compare to a hornbill.
Yeah, so the nests, I mean, I think the first artificial nests were put up decades ago now. And they were just hollowed out massive tree stumps. Where they found these tree stumps, I'll never know. But they were these huge tree stumps of, these really nice, solid wood trees. But over the years, we've tried different materials. It went from the tree stumps, and then we adapted them slightly. Then we had more, like 2x4 nest kind of builds and things like that. And now we've gone to M1 composite, which is another material. We've got these research nests that we put up the other day. So it's just constantly evolving to adapt, because the birds themselves are extremely destructive. They got those massive beaks. They've got an extra vertebrae in their neck that actually allows them to, really batter on things. But they do the same thing with their nests, and unfortunately they don't help themselves, and they destroy their nests a lot of the times.
I remember last time when we were looking at trees, there was, I don't know what you were looking for in terms of trying to hoist the nest.
Yeah, I mean, we used to look for a point above where we'd sit the nest to put a rope over and then just drag it kind of over the branch. But we've got some new equipment now, like ropes and a pulley, so we can just attach it to that upright branch, trunk there, and then just hoist it up. So it'll be a bit tricky. We're going to have to get some branches in here and there, but we'll make it work.
And the bucky, does that still come into play?
Yeah, the bucky comes into play, so I think we'll probably get the bucky in here and then drive out that way and pull it up. Yeah. Cool, so that's the hard part done. I mean, getting it up there, winching it up is pretty easy, but just wedging it in place is often the thing that takes it's a bit long and boring, but we have to get it done. So we've just put it up there, and rather than using wire and things, we just use branches and we wedge it in place so that it's kind of just sitting there. And it's not 100% secure at the moment, but when there's a windy day or something like that, what happens is that, you know, the whole tree moves a little bit and the nest seems to just sink in a little bit and wedge into place, and then that usually is it for its entire life pretty much. So yeah, very successful. This is my 50th nest that I've put up, so very excited, super stoked about that. And yeah, so from here, this nest is just going to sit up here. It could take the birds a few years to find it even, but yeah, when they do, they will likely use it and hopefully breed and hopefully, you know, increase the population. And then this is us for today, and tomorrow we're going to go and check some more nests and have another look at, see if there's another chick that we can measure and see how it's doing.
They're endangered in South Africa and they're threatened throughout Southern Africa. In protected areas, the birds are doing okay for now, but obviously I'm worried about the effects of climate change, but they've got all these other pressures that like I talked about, the poisoning and just human encroachment. So outside of protected areas in South Africa, you generally don't find the birds, or they're few and far between. So we really need to make sure we're protecting the environments that these birds live in. For the birds to begin breeding in the first place, they usually wait for that first rains. So if those first rains are delayed, their breeding is delayed. If we go through times of drought, we've seen it here before a few years ago when it was a really bad drought. We only had 4 or 5 groups breeding, and normally we get about 15 groups who start to breed. So it's very dependent on the climate, on the environment, on food availability. It's very complex, so I'm just looking at one single aspect here. And now a ground hornbill, it takes about 4 months from laying an egg to a chick fledging. So that's a good chunk of the year. So if they have to shift, it might get to the point where they can't shift these breeding seasons anymore. And these birds don't really mind skipping breeding seasons. They'll happily wait a couple of years until it's better. But the worry is that the birds they keep waiting for better years to come, but those better years never come. So they'll carry on, they'll just, the adult birds themselves might continue to live, but if they're not breeding, then that's a problem. So a few years down the line, we'll have this population collapse, and that's what we're worried about. All wildlife is facing a kind of serious threats nowadays, and it's becoming more and more worrying. So I just want to understand how can we help protect these birds? What can we be doing? So my research is always focused on it's fundamental research. We're learning new things, but it always has this conservation thread. So I think that's what really keeps me motivated when things get hard and these early mornings, and then of course being in such an amazing place in Africa. Is absolutely stunning here. So that definitely makes the job easier.
Like most endangered species, the biggest threat is always humans, unfortunately. No matter which way you look at it, it's always human-induced one way or another. Ground hornbills, thankfully, are, in the bird world at least, one of those big charismatic species that people thankfully want to conserve. And ground hornbills are very much like a flagship avian species for the savanna, for the low veld, for the bush veld really, and I think that's part of it. They definitely have this iconic structure about them. They obviously feed on a lot of pests and things. A lot of people like them because they feed on snakes and rats and all these other things. But I think it's a tricky one with conservation. I think, in the big scheme of things, you need to be conserving species that if you conserve one species, you're conserving all species. So it's definitely one of those umbrella species that we call them, that if you're conserving the ground hornbill, you're conserving a variety of other animals, which is a great thing. I mean, because In reality, people want to conserve things that they can relate to, and ground hornbills have such. They're often called primate-like birds. You know, they're very long-lived. They live in these very strong family structures. They breed very slowly, so they're very relatable species, and they have very strong kind of traditional and ties with them. So we want to conserve them, and you know, keep that tie with people while conserving not just the ground hornbills, but everything. Raising funding for conservation is always a challenge. Always a big challenge, and it's a reality, and the sad reality is, you know, a lot of our time and effort goes into fundraising. There's always private donors and things. Wild Wonderful World has been fantastic. You know, they very much link us to all these people that are wanting to help and make a difference, but don't know where to send their funding or how to do it. So they provide an amazing link of how to do it and where to ensure that the money is going to a good place.
On our website, we've got like a shop where people can go on and buy different equipment, like a collar for a wild dog or a tracking collar for elephants or whatever. And on there we decided as well, we asked Kyle and Carrie what would work for you guys, and we put up the hornbill nest, the artificial nest box that people can go on and buy the nest, you know, sort of cover the cost for a nest, and then that gives them another nest box to deploy into the field for the hornbills. So that was another angle that we used to support them, and that's been quite good as well. You can pop onto our website on wildwonderfulworld.com and go and check out the shop there, and if you want to buy a nest that can be put into a tree somewhere here in the Lowveld area and be a part of that, then go and have a look at that, and you can sort of indirectly support Kyle and Carrie's work out here in the bush.
I would love to see ground hornbills just thriving, not just in this area, but across a bigger landscape, across where they used to occur. You know, if we can get them back into those areas where they have stable populations, I think that would be a really good start for now.